Hey, everybody. Welcome to Odd and Untold, the podcast where we talk about all things strange and spooky. And this is our 4th of July episode. So happy 4th of July, everybody. Independence Day for everybody who celebrates here in the US. The rest of the world, it's just another Tuesday. But uh, joining me again this week is my buddy John. We're going to talk about some 4th of July themed horror movies. So, dude, thanks for joining me once again. This was your idea, actually, this show. So thank you.
Thank you for having me on again. Yeah, happy 4th of July for all those people celebrating, by the way, just like you said. Um, it's not the easiest thing. If you're looking for movies about vampires, movies about Frankenstein, even if you're looking at movies about zombies, anything like that, those are sort of easy to find. Even themed ones like Halloween. But the 4th of July is not an easy task. So I had to go in, I had to do some research. And of the 5 films that we're going to be talking about today, I had actually already seen 4 of them and owned them. So even with the research, I had to weed out certain things because I asked some people and they said, oh, check this out and check this out. And they weren't actually technically, they didn't occur on the 4th of July, which is really the thing that I wanted.
Okay. So before we get started, I just want to talk about a weird sort of anomaly in my family regarding the 4th of July. As you know, my son Jake was born on the 4th of July.
Yes.
So happy birthday, Jake.
Happy birthday.
It is your birthday today on the 4th of July. And I have 3 other family members who were born on the 4th of July.
No way.
Yes. So one of them is my cousin Layla, who we mentioned in our last episode together, Staten Island Ghost Stories. So she was born on the 4th of July.
Yeah.
My cousin Tommy, DJ Tommy Virtue, who, he's a 4th of July baby.
Wow.
And then my cousin Barbara, her daughter Caitlin, was born on the 4th of July. So 4 4th of July babies in my family.
That is very specific. And I know most of those people, and I had forgotten that over the years. The decades take away little bits of your memory.
Oh yeah.
So that is a very interesting thing.
Yeah, it's just the one odd thing I could think of in my own life to kind of relate to the 4th of July, because my son was born on the 4th of July, but I had my cousin Layla, my cousin Tommy, and my cousin's daughter, all 4th of July birthdays. So,
well, happy birthday to all of those people. Hopefully they're watching.
Yeah, I hope so. I don't know if any of them are, but I hope they are. I mean, Jake will probably watch, but I don't know if the others are even aware I do a podcast or are interested in the paranormal. But yeah, happy birthday to Jake, Layla, Tommy, DJ Tommy Virtue, and Caitlin. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that before we get into the 4th of July. Because yeah, like you said, 4th of July is not really known to, it's easy to find spooky Halloween movies, which we've done an episode on. And we did an episode on Christmas horror movies, Christmas/New Year's.
Yeah. The Halloween one was episode 20. The second part of it be the Christmas movies. That is seemingly overwhelmingly popular. Episode 28. There's so many of them, and they keep. There's more released since we did that episode.
Wow,
it's astonishing to me. So July 4th is actually kind of difficult. So I was thinking about maybe grouping it with some other holidays like April Fool's Day. There's a couple movies about that.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, when you mentioned this to me, I mean, the only one I could really think of was Independence Day, obviously.
Right, which is on the list, and we'll be talking about that one.
Right, and Jaws is there.
Of course.
It's the 4th is not really made as big a deal in Jaws, but it does take place over the 4th of July weekend. And
and something critical happens on the actual day on the 4th of July. So that's how we're talking about these films. Not that they are celebrating, I don't know, patriotism, although there is a lot of that in the background.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. Some of the how the American dream is sort of affected by these movies or referenced, sometimes more subtly than others. Independence Day, not too subtle at all with anything.
Anything. No,
about anything.
no subtlety.
That is no subtlety in that movie whatsoever, from stereotypes to
Oh God, there's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
But we'll get to that. So I'm going to kind of let you lead this conversation, because once again, you're sort of the cinephile here, and this was your idea. But I know you wanted to kind of start with a certain movie and let that lead into other movies. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, and well, let me just get into it. This movie is called The Bay. It was released in 2012, directed by Barry Levinson. And sort of an unusual selection of topic for Barry Levinson. Barry Levinson is known for The Natural, Good Morning Vietnam, Rain Man, movies like that. So the fact that he's associated with this type of film, which is really sort of found footage, ecological disaster, body horror, it's a lot of different genres all mixed up together. So it's a really, really interesting and disturbing film. So this film does take place during a 4th of July celebration. It starts in the morning, it goes into the evening, into the next day. And of course, there's a parade, there's barbecues, everyone's getting together. You know, it's a national holiday. They want to go swimming in pools and all sorts of things. All the celebrations that you get, basically, at some point, fireworks during the 4th of July. Well, anyway, so I mentioned that this was an ecological disaster film. And the ecological disaster happens on Chesapeake Bay. And basically, Chesapeake Bay has been polluted. According to the film, Barry Levinson was going to actually do a documentary about it, about the bay being very polluted and things like that, but someone else did it, so he sort of lost interest. So he did his own research to do this type of film. And it takes place in Claridge, Maryland. And basically what happens is that mysterious things start happening in June. Mysterious death of 2 oceanographers, with seemingly bites. The film itself opens up with about 2 million fish washing up on shore, just dead. And birds that had been eating them also dead. So there's a big mystery angle to it as well. What is causing all of these deaths? Now, that's what was reported in the mainstream media, but there was an intern who was actually doing, human interest stories on the 4th of July. And she was there with the crew, and they actually filmed what really happened, which I don't want to give too much away. I haven't given anything too much away so far, so I want to sort of keep it like that. I don't like spoilers. I was just actually watching an interview with M. Night Shyamalan, and he was the person who was interviewing him asked him, "Is there an expiration date for spoilers?" And he says no. So if you haven't seen his movies, I'm not going to spoil them for you. They're fantastic movies, especially the early ones. But anyway, so I wanted to get back to the Bay. So it's a big mystery about what is causing this, and it's tied into pollution. And I don't want to say corporations, but basically people wanting to profit and make a living. I mean, of course, the economy is important, but is it more important than the welfare of human beings and animals? So that's really the conflict, one of the larger conflicts in the story. Are you going to sacrifice people's lives, the lives of animals, so that you can make a buck? This isn't my personal opinion, by the way. This is just what is presented in the film. And I have to say, when I typed up the notes for you, one of the final bullet points is that this is the grossest film I've ever seen. And in fact, when we were texting before, I discouraged you from watching it, especially you and Jake watching it. No way. Of course, people are going to hear that, and that's the first thing they're going to do. It's like, oh, I have to see this movie. It is gross. I do not like body horror films. Well, actually, let me go back a little bit. The Fly, for instance, David Cronenberg, starring Jeff Goldblum, 1986, is a fantastic movie, but it's gross. I can't really watch it often. I think I've seen it once, maybe in the last 15 years. I saw it last year sometime. And it was great, but it's gross. This is worse, especially if you don't like creepy, crawly things. Do not watch this film. And no offense to Barry Levinson, because I think Barry Levinson made a highly disturbing film. I watched it for the first time this week, and I'm trying to push the images out of my brain. I wish I could just wash the memories away and never think about this movie ever again. But I think one of the most difficult things to do in processing this film is that a lot of it, he says 80% of the research is accurate.
Mm.
And if you see the film, you're like, 80% of this is accurate.
And it should be noted too that you're talking about this grossness and this body horror. This is also what you would describe as a found footage or a cinema verite movie. Like, it's shot as if it's real. It's not like a cinematic movie. This is like found footage. So, and I haven't seen the movie. Again, like you said, you kind of discouraged me from seeing it. Even though Jake and I love found footage movies, but we kind of stick more to the paranormal, ghosts, Bigfoot, UFO type found footage stuff versus reality based stuff like serial killers and pandemic type stuff like this, or diseases. And
even though we've talked about it on the show, we love the Blair Witch Project.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite movies. And, but I know a lot of people with the shaky cam, they can get sick from that and nauseous, and it can disorient them. I mean, it's a hard genre to be into, and if you get motion sick, anything sort of found footage or cinema verite is going to be tough to get through, because it's not that nice steady camera work of a typical film. It's shot as if it's real. It's shot as if it's happening in real time, like some amateur is filming this stuff, or a mockumentary. So yeah, so this is the one movie on the list I have not seen. So I'm and I may not see it if you're recommending.
Count yourself fortunate that you haven't seen it. I was one of those people. I really like the Blair Witch Project. I have only ever seen it once because of that shaky cam. In fact, I remember watching it in the movie theater and just wanting to get sick because of all the movement. So I actually had to not look at the center of the screen and look down a little bit. The way that I deal with that now is, well, I haven't been to the movie theaters in a long time. It's sitting all the way in the back. The further back you are and center of the screen without having to tilt your head up, the less dizzy you will get.
Yeah.
So that's something that I had to figure out because of that film. And because you're in it, and it's the same thing with The Bay, it seems like you are watching something that is real. So it upsets, it puts a certain amount of stress on you that other movies won't,
Right. Well, there's no soundtrack. There's no musical stings. There's no, flashbacks, or, you're not really getting that break that a lot of standard movies will give you. They'll give you a little bit of that break from the action, a little bit of comic relief, something to kind of break up the movie. You get the 3 acts. And again, you do tend to get that in the found footage, but it's a little more relentless. It's just,
not in this.
Once you're in it, it just doesn't really stop until the end.
It does not stop. And it stays with you. One of the just on a side note, one of the really interesting things about it is that, as you said, this is not a paranormal film. This is all about science, right? And when all of these strange things start happening, people immediately point to conspiracy theories. Some woman is talking about seeing a UFO by the bay. People are talking about drugs being sprayed into the air. Someone even mentioned satanic cults. So I found that really, really interesting, that people in one way, shape, or form are trying to make sense of the strangeness that this world can bring.
Yeah, and you see that a lot with natural disasters. You'll often see, after the disaster, people will talk about UFO sightings, or someone saw Mothman, or
Yeah, right.
I
We were
had
talking about that
premonitions. There always seems to be, like you said, this sort of paranormal slash supernatural talk after any sort of natural disaster, or even man-made disaster, in the conspiracy theories. And like
This
you
was
said,
more
people trying to make sense of it, and it can't just be that this just happened. There's got to be, the government's behind it, and Dick Cheney caused 9/11 and this and that, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I think once you get into like, well, Mothman was seen fleeing 9/11 after, like you're kind of getting into some weird stuff there. So
that is weird.
but that's a topic for another episode.
Yeah, a different episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, while this movie is extremely effective, I cannot recommend it because it's so disturbing. I don't want to be blamed for someone, not being able to sleep or having nightmares or anything like that. But if this sort of thing doesn't bother you, well, then by all means, check it out.
Yeah, some people love the body horror and
Yeah.
the found footage stuff, and
Yeah.
probably right up their alley. But yeah, I don't know. I may watch it just for like that one time viewing, just to see it. I won't have Jake watch it, but I'll watch it.
Yeah, I'll never watch it again.
Okay. So there's your endorsement, folks. If you like body horror, if you like being grossed out, this is the movie for you. If not, stick to some of the other movies on our list that are a little less in your face.
Great endorsement. All right. So one of the things when I was doing this, I asked the question, so why the 4th of July? And I wrote this little thing up. So let me just read it so that I don't get it wrong.
Sure.
So the 4th of July represents the American dream, industry, capitalism. What happens when what allows for the American dream overshadows the well-being of the environment? An official in the movie notes, the reason for not closing off the entire Chesapeake Bay region is because they are talking about beaches, restaurants, vacation fishing. The economy is more important than people's lives. That's basically how one of the themes of the film. And as soon as that came up, I'm like, oh, well, that sounds like another film that is also happens on the 4th of July, Jaws.
One of my favorite movies ever. I mean, whatever genre you're talking about, just horror movie, blockbuster, whatever you're talking about, it's like one of my top probably 5 movies of all time.
Jaws is amazing. I just rewatched it yesterday just to make sure that all of it was fresh in my mind, and I was blown away. This film was made in 1975, and it can not only compete with the films that are coming out now, it is far, in many ways, superior. Of course, that's only my opinion, but that is how I feel. That's strongly how I feel.
Yeah, and I think many people would agree with you. I mean, from the casting to the pacing to the writing,
the music,
just
cinematography,
the tone, the amount of times they show the shark, which again was accidental, but
amazing.
It's one of these things where it just came together to be perfect. And yeah, I don't think you could pull off Jaws in this day and age, because you'd have CGI, you'd have young, attractive actors. Not that these guys were not attractive, but these were realistic looking actors. I mean, yeah. Robert Shaw, Roy Scheider, Richard Dreyfuss. I mean, these were, the
mayor, Murray Hamilton, like
yeah,
really normal looking dudes.
Right. These were not like GQ cover models. This is not, no offense, because I love them, but like Henry Cavill or,
same,
who's a phenomenal actor, but he's a fucking god, I mean, you look at the guy and you're like, I can't compete with that. But like, you see Roy Scheider and you're like, yeah, this is, a cop who moonlights as a sheriff in a small town over the summer. And you look at, Robert Shaw and you're like, yeah, this is a grizzled old sea captain. And Richard Dreyfuss, like, yeah, he's kind of the, kind of post 60s hippie college grad who's, trying to make his mark in marine biology, like I'm sorry, the mayor's name again, not F. Murray Abraham, Murray Hamilton.
Murray Hamilton, yeah.
Yeah, got my Murrays confused. But again, he's not some, chiseled Adonis. He's not, he's a character actor, but he plays this part so well of just the mayor who's really trying to balance, panic versus, I got to save my town. I got to keep the beaches open. I got to get the cash flow coming in, because if we don't, this town is going to suffer. And he's slimy, but he's also sympathetic. And that's a hard thing to pull off, especially these days.
Yeah.
You don't get that gravitas from actors these days.
No, there's a very similar character in The Bay, by the way, Bear John Stockman, who is also sympathetic, normal looking dude, but nowhere near as sympathetic as Murray Hamilton turns out to be, because he is looking out for everybody. Well, not everybody. He's looking out for the business aspect of it, the economy. One of the characters in the background, you hear this, that unless they do something about the shark, everyone's going to be on welfare for during the winter, because how are people supposed to make a living? But again, are you going to sacrifice people's lives just so that you can make a living? So there's an interesting conflict in both The Bay and in Jaws.
Yeah, and again, there's just a realism to Jaws. There,
Yeah,
just from the character portrayals to the actual confrontation with the shark, to the mayor. And again, it's just, everyone's got their motivations. Everyone feels real. It's just, and just to tie this into, cryptozoology or the paranormal, I don't know if people know this, but it was based on a true story.
Yeah.
Of shark attacks in New Jersey in the early 1900s, where I don't think it was a great white, I think it was a tiger shark, had swam up a river, and kids were going into the river swimming in the summer, and these sharks were eating these kids, and people didn't want to believe it. Oh, there's no sharks in the fresh water. Sharks don't go in rivers. But there it was. And it was the same sort of reaction that we see in Jaws, where no, this is a boating accident. No, this is a one-off, attack. We got to keep the beaches open. And the authorities, the powers that be, are not taking it seriously, even though all the evidence is showing, like, hey, this is happening and you have to do something about it. So, and again, Peter Benchley based Jaws on that story, but I don't know if many people know that it was based on a true story. Again, not a great white, not in this fictional town, New England town or whatever, but based on true events. So
yeah, Brody mentions it at some point. He says, what does he say? He says that something similar happened on a Jersey beach in 1916, 5 people in 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that sort of meta quality in both The Bay and in Jaws, that they are in one way, shape, or form based on this world, the reality and challenges of this world. And of course, it's fictionalized, but it is very unsettling in a way that Independence Day, when we talk about Independence Day, will never be unsettling, because it's just not real until it happens.
Right.
I guess we'll deal with that if and when it happens.
Right. But like you said, for The Bay and for Jaws, there's this precedent of it happening, like in real life. Like, these events happened, and yeah, like maybe in the movies they're a little sensationalized, they're a little bit hyperbolic, and like I said, it's this great white, and it's not just any great white, it's a huge great white.
Yeah.
Whereas the 1916 attacks were, again, I believe a tiger shark, and I believe just nothing monstrous about it other than a shark being a shark, which is monstrous enough. You don't really need a 25-footer to be scary. I mean, a regular shark is just scary enough.
Parents have to tell little kids that there are no monsters in the world. They are real monsters in the world. Sharks, for sure, real monster. Grizzly bears, monsters.
Oh yeah, it's easy to say that when you're not being attacked by them, but then as soon as it happens, there's real monsters. And just one of my favorite movies of all time. Like I said, it's just, I had that on VHS, like when VCRs first came out. My dad had probably got a pirated copy off of HBO somewhere from a friend, and it's just a copy of a copy of a copy, and it was grainy, but it was just one of those VHS tapes that I have on all the time, just watching Jaws, and to a lesser extent Jaws 2, which is not nearly as good as the first one, but not nearly as bad as the ones that followed.
Yeah, I just watched Jaws 2 last year just because I was in the mood, and it's okay. I mean, it certainly isn't the original, but nothing is really the original. I think it's almost unfair to compare anything to Jaws, even the sequel.
Yeah, Jaws 2 is a perfectly acceptable popcorn flick.
Yeah.
There's nothing offensive about it. There's nothing where you roll your eyes. I mean, it's a fine movie, but the original is just like a masterpiece. It's
right.
Like we said, from the music to the writing to the pacing to the casting. I mean, just everything was just the performances. I mean, the whole speech about the Indianapolis from Robert Shaw.
That is chilling.
Chilling.
Also based on a real event.
Right.
Of the USS Indianapolis on July 30th, 1945. It's I love when movies are able to do that, tell a story that adds something to what is happening in the film that you're watching. Not many movies can do it as successfully as Jaws. And of course, it's a tragic event, but it makes it all the more terrifying what is actually happening in the film.
Yeah, because you're intertwining this real horrific tragedy into a horror movie, a monster movie, essentially.
Yeah,
and it's something
monster movie.
Yeah, but it happened. And Quint is telling this story, and there are survivors who will say, yeah, that's pretty much what happened. And just to imagine human beings having to live through that. I mean, just forget the horrors of war. You're talking, just what human beings do to each other. And then you just have this sort of happenstance where the Indianapolis gets torpedoed and it starts sinking, and you're thinking that, like, how could it get any worse? And then you're like, oh, there's just hundreds of sharks in the water and they're going to pick us off, and nobody knows we're out here. The SOS didn't get heard, top secret mission.
Just waiting
to die. And, that is scarier than anything in the movie.
Really. Yeah. Terrific.
Yeah. Yeah. But great movie. And yeah, it takes place over 4th of July weekend. There was something you mentioned that did take place on the actual 4th of July in Jaws.
Oh, in this is the mayor. He's actually being interviewed for television by Peter Benchley, by the way, the guy who wrote the novel and the screenplay. And he says, he just openly lies to the press, and he says, I'm pleased and happy to repeat the news that we have in fact caught and killed a large predator that supposedly injured some bathers. If you see Chrissy's arm, I think you might have a different take on that.
This was no boating accident.
And it wasn't Jack the Ripper. I love that line.
That's great.
As you see, it's a beautiful day. The beaches are open and people are having a wonderful time. Amity, as you know, means friendship. And he's lying to people. And it's horrifying. Because the celebration, that's again, no spoilers. That's what he says when he's being interviewed. The beaches are open again, and there is an attack. I won't say how, but there is an attack on that day. They're supposed to have a week-long celebration that starts on July 4th and goes to July 10th. So that was just the first day of many celebratory days where people were going to make basically probably the most money that they were going to make all year. So he was looking out for them, and doesn't really work out.
And and he plays it so well, because he's really not lying so much as he's almost lying to himself as well. And you kind of get that from him, that he's not trying to sacrifice people. He's just trying to convince himself, like, this is a non-issue. This is, we've solved this problem. Go to the beach, go swimming, spend your money, because, we're a town that makes our money, 2 months out of the 12 of the year. We're a summer town. And if we have to close the beaches for one day out of those 32 days or, 62 days or whatever it is, that is devastating for them. And he's lying to himself too. Like, he just is trying to convince himself that there's not an issue, even though Brody's trying to tell him. It's not even behind the scenes where he's admitting that Brody's right. He's trying to tell Brody, no, like, we're good. We got this. you know, so he is sympathetic in that way because he really is just trying to, at the end of the day, just kind of save his town. So I always found his portrayal really, really cool. I mean, like I said, the whole freaking movie is just pitch perfect.
He's really excellent for a supporting role, and one of the actually the few people who doesn't come back in the sequel.
Yeah.
I guess he did get reelected after this.
um, was Ellen Brody in the sequel? Lorraine Gary?
Yeah,
She was. I didn't
yeah,
remember that.
she
I
was
thought
in 2 and the star of 4.
right.
The less we say about 4, the better.
Yes.
Although Michael Caine is in it. So.
Got to go kill a shark, you say? Right. As long as it's not killer bees. Oh, Michael Caine is great, you know, and again, if not for him in that movie, it would be unwatchable.
Oh my God.
He's the only thing in that movie that makes it even kind of tolerable. And it's not. It's barely tolerable, but Michael Caine makes it at least you don't want to, you know, throw your TV out the window.
He's always engaging to watch. So
yeah.
Thank you for Michael Caine.
Yeah, he brings a little bit of levity and class to an otherwise just pure cash grab movie. There's nothing else to say about it. It's just purely there to capitalize on the Jaws name and bring in money while spending as little money as possible, except for on Michael Caine, apparently. So.
He was in a little bit of a slump at the time, so I think they did him a favor. And look, they say that no press is bad press. We are still talking about that movie and Michael Caine to this day.
To this day.
So
yeah,
press is bad press.
Yeah. But yeah, he makes it. And yeah, the third one had some cool people in it, but also just because who's in that? Dennis Quaid and
Dennis Quaid.
What's the actress's name? I can see her face. Her name's on the tip of my tongue.
I don't know. I should have done my research for those films, but
I'm gonna look it up right now because I
watching it. You're looking it up. I have an interesting fact.
Go ahead.
I don't know if people noticed the name of the boat that they're on Quint's boat is called Orca.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there is a 1977 movie called Orca, which got a lot of flack for people said at the time trying to be like a Jaws ripoff.
Right.
But
it was like Canadian Jaws.
Yeah. It's an excellent film for many reasons.
Oh, I love Orca.
Yeah.
So the actress's name was Bess Armstrong.
Oh, yeah, of course, Bess Armstrong.
Who was a cutie. I had a little crush on her back then. Louis Gossett Jr. was in it.
Yeah.
Leah Thompson.
I completely forgot.
Yeah, I forget Louis Gossett Jr. is the man. I forgot he was in it. But he's another one. He's good in anything he does.
He's amazing.
He could do comedy. He could do serious. He could, just great actor.
Yeah, I was just watching earlier this year, actually. I was watching An Officer and a Gentleman, and he's amazing in that film. Just amazing. Yeah,
so you have Jaws 3, which, good actors, but
yeah, what happened?
What happened? Just terrible screenplay and execution of that said screenplay.
Right, they wanted to go for the gimmick. It was Jaws 3D.
3D, yep.
Like Friday the 13th 3D.
3D. Yeah, it was just
really pushing that 3D.
3D thing. Yeah. But
now no one pushes it, but it makes a lot of money. Tom Cruise is very interested in getting Ghost Protocol. Is that what it's called? No, that's not the new one. I forget what the new one's coming out in July.
Mm-hmm.
But he wanted to get it in IMAX 3D, but there's not enough theaters.
Yeah, and I just the 3D thing I just want to watch a movie.
It's great. Sometimes it's terrible.
Yeah, and
you have glasses, so it must be particularly difficult for you.
Yeah, I have a really bad astigmatism, and so 3D. Because I remember just seeing the original Avatar, and this is years ago. This is when my astigmatism wasn't even that bad. Just watching the original Avatar in theaters, the James Cameron Avatar, I walked out with like a pounding headache, just because my eyes can't deal with the 3D. So to this day, anything in 3D, I don't see it in the 3D version. So I won't go see Avatar the new Avatar movies in 3D. Like I just can't appreciate it because it's more painful than fun for me. So just no thanks. And I know a lot of people again feel the same way about 3D as they do like the found footage. It's just it can be disorienting, and especially with like a 3.5 hour movie. So
I'm fine with 2D.
Yeah, me too. Like enough 3D in real life all day, every day. So
Yeah, right.
give me something not in 3D for once. So yeah, Jaws. Go out and watch. If you haven't seen Jaws, just stop what you're doing right now. Pause the podcast.
Right.
Go watch it because it's just so good.
It's amazing.
It's an amazing movie. So next on the agenda, are we done talking about Jaws? Or do you want? Was there anything else you wanted to? I'm sorry, I don't.
No, I think we covered all the things that I wanted to talk about. All the things I wanted to mention. So the next film, you're going to notice that all of these films are really different, with the exception of those first two. The rest of the films are really different. The next film that I wanted to talk about is The Return of the Living Dead, 1985, which I watched a couple of times just this week, and I know that you watched it earlier today.
Actually, last night I watched it.
Oh, you watched it last night?
Yeah.
So this is a remarkable film. If I can say just a couple of things about the writer-director, it's Dan O'Brien, who's known for writing the original Alien. He wrote Heavy Metal, Blue Thunder, also starring Roy Scheider, Life Force, Total Recall, and he did the story for Alien versus Predator. So he's like the real deal. And in 1985, he decided to take a story that was written by John A. Russo, and John A. Russo co-wrote the original screenplay for Night of the Living Dead. So many credentials being thrown around here. This is an amazing movie, and it couldn't be more different from Night of the Living Dead if it was a different genre, almost. They're so different, literally black and white.
Oh, yeah.
Black and white and color. So different, these films. And they both have to do, of course, with zombies.
The Living Dead.
Living Dead, yes. So what I don't even know where to start why I love this movie so much. The opening title card reads, "The events portrayed in this film are all true. The names are real names of real people and real organizations." So immediately it just starts off as it has this whole meta feel. And then it gets even deeper, where one of the characters, Frank, asks another character, Freddie, who's new to where they're working. He says, "Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead?" Like, he just comes out and he asks him.
Right.
And he says it's real. And Freddie's like, "It can't be real. They showed zombies taking over the world." So this is a very strange zombie film where they actually use the word zombie. They reference probably one of the most popular, not the first zombie movie, but probably the earliest, most popular zombie movie, Night of the Living Dead, 1968. So it immediately has this feel, and yet everything is so, it's not realistic, and yet really gritty at the same time. So I don't know how Dan O'Brien did that, but again, that's why you look back to Alien, and it's also in that way, like, very gritty, very real, but also science fiction, you know?
Right. It's like a lived-in world. It's very gritty, dirty. I mean, you're watching a movie, but yeah, there's that. Yeah, and I remember people talking about that with Alien, that sci-fi before then had been very sort of idealistic. I mean, you had Star Trek, you had 2001: A Space Odyssey. You had these movies where everything in the future was perfect and clean, and here you have Alien, which is basically space truckers, and they're smoking and they're cursing and they're just a ragtag bunch of yeah.
There's lots of drool with the alien. I mean, it's a mess.
It's a messy, grimy, blue collar movie.
Yeah.
Set way in the future. And this movie is Return of the Living Dead, same thing. There's just this grime and grit, like very 80s. The soundtrack is great. I mean, it's just like this, you know,
the synth keyboard, the Casio, I think it's a Casio keyboard that they actually did it on. They recorded it on. Is amazing. So 80s, so perfect.
yeah, it's like budget 80s, you know, stereotypical 80s like hard rock, heavy metal kind of music. Nothing really recognizable, but it's instantly recognizable as 80s stuff.
Yeah, like you hear it, it's like, oh, that is. If you heard it out of context, you would know.
Yeah,
This
like
is
this is from the
clearly
80s. Yep. So I'm sorry.
so
Go on. So yeah. So.
they nail that 80s thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, without giving out too many spoilers, because so far what I've said, it takes place in the first like 3 minutes of the movie. It's basically what they show. I think on Amazon, they show the first 3 minutes as a preview.
Right.
So let's see. Let me just tell you what Frank says. Frank says, "Did you see that movie Night of the Living Dead? Did you know that movie was based on a true case?" Freddie, of course, doesn't believe him and says, "I mean, they showed zombies taking over the world." Frank says, "They changed it all around. Back in 1969, which is a mistake, but it's a purposeful mistake, of course, because we know that John Russo wrote the he wrote the story the screenplay was based on, and the film came out in 1968. So this lends it to Frank maybe not being a reliable person, which we'll find out. You know, you can make up your mind about that." He says, back in 1969 in Pittsburgh at the VA hospital, there was a chemical spill, and all that stuff kind of leaked down into the morgue and made all the dead bodies kind of jump up around it as though it was alive. And Freddie's like, "What chemical?" And Frank responds, 2,4,5-trioxin, made from the Darrow Chemical Company. And this is where we start getting into the similar themes of that we find in The Bay and in Jaws, where there are institutions. The institution here is going to be the Army. And the other two, it's very much politics, you know, who is in charge of allowing companies to manufacture certain things, what happens when something goes wrong. And that's really where this movie, and by the way, these movies, especially this one, not preachy at all. If that's what you're worried about, not preachy at all. It's just super, super entertaining. So the Army was trying to develop it, and it contaminated the dirt and these dead bodies. And basically they put them in a bunch of canisters, and they were supposed to ship them somewhere to the Darrow Company, but they shipped them to this place where Frank has been working for the last 14 years, which is called "You Need a Medical Supply, You Need It, We Got It," which is just charming and funny and very, I don't know, whatever.
And Frank is played by character actor James Karen, who was in Poltergeist as the real estate agent guy who's Craig T. Nelson's boss.
Yeah.
He was also the spokesperson for, what was that, Pathmark?
Yeah.
So
some supermarket. I think it's Pathmark. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just double check. But
he was just film that they essentially took him and Freddie, Tom Matthews, and they put them in the sequel. And apparently the same thing happens to them in the sequel that happens to them in this movie.
Right.
It's like strange.
Yeah, he was the signature pitch man for Pathmark.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, I remember just growing up with him on the commercials, and he was just always, he was on TV all the time. And then you'd see him in Poltergeist and this movie, and
yeah, he pops up here and there in the 80s movies.
Yeah, but he just he plays it real well in this movie too. Just a real good comedic effect.
He's so good. So the owner, Bert, he's afraid what's going to happen when this gets out, that there was a chemical spill. And he says, "I'm going to be sued by the Darrow Chemical Company. I'm going to be investigated by the government. I might become famous. I might even lose my business. I might even go to jail." So again, here's a person in authority who's not concerned about people's welfare. He's concerned about himself. He's concerned about his business. And he mentions that to the colonel later on, the Army colonel. And you don't hear him say it, But the colonel responds, "What? Why didn't you report this?" There's a pause. That's understandable. That's what the colonel says. It's like, oh my God, it's understandable.
Right.
Chaos ensues. I can't, no spoilers. I do want to say that it does begin at 5:30 on July 3rd, and it ends at 5:01 on July 4th. So
Yeah,
keeping 4th of July.
and it's interesting because it doesn't, like, the 4th of July is really not made to be a character
Yeah,
as you may in this film, as it is in like the Bay or like Jaws. It's a huge
yeah. It is
part
a
of the
both of them.
motivation for the mayor, because this is the big holiday of the summer. This is 4th of July. But we're in this movie, they specifically tell you the date. You know, like you said, you get the
Yeah,
date,
it's
you
on
get
the
the
screen
time. It's Eastern Standard
and
Time.
the
Yeah,
time.
they tell you. You know, it's not just a character mentioning it in a throwaway line. It's they tell you exactly what date it is. So
Yeah, Bert mentions it in the first 2 minutes, and then Frank's talking about the "I'll see you at the barbecue." Some of the other kids are talking about it, but it's not the week-long event on Amity Island or in Claridge, Maryland. Um, so why is it there? If not to show, well, industry people want to make a living, and of course, who doesn't want to make a living, and who doesn't want to make a good living? But are you going to sacrifice people's lives to do that? And that's one of the central conflicts in all three of these films.
and again, this was 1985. This is probably jingoism at its highest, and Cold War,
Yeah.
kind of reaching its boiling point, and soon after coming to an end. But like you said, the other films were really more about capitalism and making money and corporations. This one has that element, but there's also sort of the military industrial complex where you kind of have,
Yeah.
the military has a real vested interest in this.
Mm-hmm.
And that again is something you see early on in the film, that they've been trying to track these canisters down since
14 years.
14 years,
Yeah. They have somebody on 24/7 standby. The
Right.
colonel.
Right. So the military plays a big part in this, and there's a little bit of, again, not for spoilers, but the military is shown to be strong, and it's just kind of like a
To
very
be
80s
decisive.
thing of like
Yeah.
putting out Hollywood movies, and it's like, look what the American military can do if we needed to.
Yeah.
So look at all the resources we have, and look how connected we are, and look how, just pick up the phone and you can talk to so and so and get this done and get that done. And
It's amazing.
yeah, so yeah, a much more subtle use of the 4th of July in that sense, where again in Jaws it's that weekend, it's the holiday, and that's why it is so crucial to keep the beaches open. The holiday is almost a character in and of itself, where it's just it propels the movie. Whereas in this movie, it's a much more sort of subtle undercurrent of just America.
Right. In those other two films, it would be sort of like a Christmas Carol. Like Christmas is central to what's happening in all those movies that you talked about on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And here it's just sort of very subtle.
Right.
Unlike Independence Day, which we'll get to in a little bit. Yeah, but it's that complex. We have these two local mayors in the first two films, and then we have a local business owner in this one, and we have the United States Army.
Right.
So authority.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
The ultimate authority, I guess.
Yeah.
In the United States, especially at the time, 1985.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll say no more on that, but
no.
Okay. So I was actually thinking about maybe doing, if you were interested, like a whole film. Sorry, not a whole film, a whole podcast on zombie movies. But I don't know if we're gonna do that. I don't know if you're interested.
Yeah, we could do that at some point. Definitely.
I just wanted to mention quickly that up until this point, as far as zombie movies, they're very sort of lumbering and they just go after people and they eat people, and it's the numbers that you have to avoid. It's like a herd. If you can avoid the herd, then you should be okay. This is the first time where they run, and they run fast. And one of the characters, Ernie, says they're not stronger than
a normal
any other
person.
human,
Yeah.
right? Just a normal person. But you imagine the lumbering zombies in Night of the Living Dead. He continued that in Dawn of the Dead. Even Day of the Dead, which was released a couple of months before this one, just sort of lumbering, dumb creatures. And this changed the stakes entirely. Again, I don't want too many spoilers, but there's a lot of running.
Yeah, the zombies in this are very different.
Yeah.
And it's used to really creepy effect. So yeah, check this one out if you haven't seen it. This is another good one. It's campy as hell. Clu Gallagher's eyebrows are everywhere. Got to trim those things. Bert.
Yeah, but that's part of the appeal. They're not taking it too seriously.
Oh yeah, it's
very
totally
serious things happening,
right.
But it's also very, very lighthearted and funny with some subtle commentary.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting mix of things.
Yeah, but it's really good. It's like you're not going to watch it and be like, oh, I wasted 90 minutes of my life. It'll make you laugh. It's a little creepy. It's very entertaining.
And you care about the characters.
Yeah.
Strange.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
And yeah, we used to remember every time we got sick in high school, we would just kind of relate really well to Frank. And what was the kid's name?
Freddie.
Freddie.
I don't know if that's a reference to Freddy Krueger, because Nightmare on Elm Street came out the year before, 1984.
Oh, okay.
Maybe? I don't know.
But yeah, without giving spoilers, well, whenever we got sick, we related really well to those two characters, and we would make jokes about it, like, but yeah, so really good movie, like one of my favorites. Again, it's not like a good movie.
It's not like Kane or anything.
Yeah, but it's entertaining and it's funny, and like you said, there's no like message or preachiness, or it's just good old fashioned fun, like mid 80s ridiculousness.
All these movies so far. Sorry, that's not true. Jaws is PG. Did you know that Jaws was PG?
I had no idea.
It's because they didn't have R or PG-13 back then, but it's PG.
Wow.
The Bay is R, and this movie is R. Just
yeah.
If you're younger and watching our podcast.
Yeah. Don't do it without your parents' permission.
Yes. If you're under, what is R? Under 17?
Under 17.
Yeah.
But if you are watching the podcast and you are under 17, go into your mother's wallet and send me $1. My dad will get that joke.
Oh God.
An old soupy sales reference. He got in a lot of trouble for that back in the day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a joke, but kids were doing it and got him into some trouble.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, you were talking about something that you didn't know. Did we talk about it already? Something that you didn't know came from this film.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that. So yeah, you should mention that, because I don't think a lot of people will realize that.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, so the big thing in this film is that the zombies want brains, and they're moaning, brains, and
it's living brains. They want live ones.
They want live brains, and that's kind of where that trope comes from, because you watch Night of the Living Dead.
Nope.
The zombies don't moan anything. I mean, they moan, but they're not making words. They're not particularly looking for brains. They're just eating people. And every victim you see in that movie, they're just eating the internal organs. They're eating an arm. They're eating everything. It's not, but this movie, it's specifically for brains.
For brains.
Like the Simpsons episode, Treehouse of Horror, I think it was the third one.
Yeah.
He did a zombie sketch, and that was that whole thing with brains. And they go to Homer, and they won't eat Homer because he's not smart, and
brains.
They want brains. And it's fun. It's funny because when I had the original site before Odd and Untold, it was the occult section, and there's a scene in that where Bart is trying to send the zombies back away. They're trying to get rid of the zombies, and Bart and Lisa go to the library, and they go to the occult section to get a book So on the website, if you go to my website now, even Odd and Untold, if you go to the About section, there's like a little clip, not a little clip, a little image of the occult section
Yeah.
from that Simpsons episode. And it's clearly Simpsons animation. And it's just Bart and Lisa go to the library and they go to the occult section to get this book to learn how to turn the zombies away from town and back to the grave. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, but that's where the brains thing came from, was this movie. Brains.
This one. And it happens every year. Anyone who dresses up as a zombie, that's what they say. Brains.
Right. And it's one of these things that is
came from.
Right. And most people don't know where it came from. They'll say, oh, it's Night of the Living Dead. It's that zombie movie. No, and
some other one, right?
It was this movie where it really started, that they wanted brains, not just to eat people. It was specifically the brain. So
specifically the brain. No spoilers.
Right. Cool. Yeah, cool little tidbit.
Yeah.
All right. So you want to move on to the next flick?
Yes. I'm going to preface this by saying that this week, I've been watching 80s slasher movies. I don't know what got me into it this week, because I was prepping for this show. But just for something a little bit different, I was watching some 80s slasher movies. So I saw, what was it called? Graduation Day. I don't know if you've ever seen Graduation Day.
Once a long time ago. I know of it, though.
Right. So I was watching all these movies and I liked them. And I thought, is there one that is set on the 4th of July? And I just had to think about it for a second. It's like, oh, of course, I Know What You Did Last Summer. From 1997, directed by Jim Gillespie. And no offense to Jim Gillespie, I think the more interesting thing is that it's written by Kevin Williamson. So he's coming on. He's the guy who wrote Scream, and he did this one directly after Scream because people lost their minds when Scream came out. It's like revitalized the whole genre that was dying at that time in the mid-90s. So people went mad for it. So they rushed I Know What You Did Last Summer into production. And of course, it's from a 1973 novel by Lois Duncan. I don't know if you know Lois Duncan. So Kevin Williamson, known for writing Scream, Scream 2, Scream 4, creating Dawson's Creek, which had a whole bunch of really good Halloween, scary sort of episodes. I don't know if you watched Dawson's Creek. They're in there. I know it might seem insane, but it's from Kevin Williamson, who loves horror movies. He also developed the Vampire Diaries, and he created The Following. I don't know if you've ever watched The Following on Fox. It's 3 seasons starring Kevin Bacon.
No.
Great show. The Following. It's available on Amazon right now. Great show. 2013 to 2015. Check it out. Kevin Bacon's fantastic. It's great.
So this one's got some big names in it too.
Yes, it does. So let's mention the names. So Jennifer Love Hewitt, of course, is the central character. Julie James. I think for you and I, the biggest character, of course, is Sarah Michelle Gellar. I can't even say her name. I'm so excited. Buffy Summers herself is in this movie. Incidentally, she was also in Scream 2. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
And anytime you can get Sarah Michelle Gellar in your film, you have to watch it. So Buffy Summers in this film. Ryan Phillippe, Freddie Prinze Jr., Johnny Galecki, whole bunch of people. People who were very popular in the 90s. I guess that's as much as I'll say about that. So this film, much to Lois Duncan's horror, got turned into an 80s slasher film. So that's not the way that she wrote it, because it was 1973 when she wrote it. The genre wasn't even really a thing.
Right.
So, but Kevin Williamson wanted that type of film. So he took so many of these elements and he put them in this film. The basic premise that there's four kids, 2 couples. Let's do a little Spock here. 2 couples.
I can't do it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard.
You're lucky.
Yeah. William Shatner couldn't do it in Wrath of Khan, so he had to sort of help use the glass to help him.
Oh,
Like,
Spock. Oh.
Yeah, kind of like a claw thing going on. So these four kids, and again, no spoilers. This happens at the very beginning of the film. Oh, can I just mention the very beginning of the film is
Yeah.
this fantastic helicopter shot, just this one long shot um, along these bluffs. The sun is going down. It is absolutely gorgeous, and it's set to a cover of Seals and Crofts' "Summer Breeze" by one of my favorite bands of all time, Type O Negative. And you would think, if you know Type O Negative, there's very aggressive, very sort of scary sometimes, very funny sometimes, but it's really very beautiful at the same time. Well, anyway, so these kids, the whole premise is that they get into a car accident after graduation, and they have to figure out what they're going to do about the person that they hit. So I don't want to say anything else, but this is similar. Remember, I mentioned the 80s slasher films, Prom Night, 1980, starring Jamie Lee Curtis. Well, there are four kids in that film who also sort of get involved in hurting someone, and then they don't know what to do about it. There's another film called The House on Sorority Row, where something similar happens with the sorority sisters and the house matron. So again, all of these things happen at the very, very beginning of these films. So I don't want, no spoilers, but they're very similar. So I love Prom Night. I grew up watching Prom Night. I saw The House on Sorority Row later, much later in life, just because I was interested in 80s slasher films. So watching I Know What You Did Last Summer, I just watched it again. It's like, oh my God, this is just like an 80s slasher film. It's such a beautifully done, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like homage.
Homage, yes, to those films. So it's near and dear to my heart for that reason. By no stretch of the imagination is it like a great film like Jaws, but it's a really, really solid film that I really enjoy.
Yeah, and it's like high budget, well-known actors. I mean, everything that came before it was kind of Halloween. And again, like Jamie Lee Curtis is now very famous, but at the time she wasn't.
Nobody knew who she was.
Right. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Johnny Depp, and but nobody knew who he was back then.
Right.
But with this film, it was, Sarah Michelle Gellar coming off of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Freddie Prinze Jr., Jennifer Love Hewitt coming off of Party of Five and some other films, and Ryan Philippe, and you had
Johnny Galecki even coming off of Roseanne.
Right. So you had a slasher film with people who could really act. These weren't, the scream queens of just girls who ran around getting murdered and, terrible acting and, oh, let's hide in the basement. That'll be a good idea. Like these were, seasoned actors and actresses who knew what they were doing, who had come off very successful shows and movies in a slasher film. So it kind of, like you said, it's not a great movie. It's not, cinema gold. It's a slasher film, but it's
a really good one.
A really good one. It's on another level because of the acting and because of the writing and because of the cinematography and the budget needed.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautiful to look at if you just want to have it on, listen to the soundtrack or whatever, which is not true of a lot of 80s films.
Right.
They are very low budget, and they literally, like we said before, have the Casio keyboard. And sometimes, like in Return of the Living Dead, it's good, and sometimes it's not so good.
Right. Yeah, this one works, and
it really works.
Yeah, but clearly set on the 4th of July. There's fireworks in the beginning. It's all about these kids in the first year, in the beginning of the movie, it's they're graduating high school. They're all kind of going off to college, and which of the couples are going to stay together. They're not going to see each other. And then this following year, it's them all coming home from their first year of college and kind of reconnecting and reuniting. And then the tension kind of ramps up over what they did last summer, which we know what they did last summer. We know. And then, like certain things.
There's actually 4 July 4ths mentioned, because it's the one at the beginning,
mm-hmm.
and the second one, which is the majority of the film, then one at the very end. But also they mention what happened the year before.
Right.
There's 4 July 4th consecutive ones that are mentioned. So
So there's stuff. Yeah.
fireworks, parades. This one actually really embraces the 4th of July in that traditional sort of way.
Right, because there's a major scene towards the end of the movie that takes place during a 4th of July parade.
Yeah.
With one of the main characters.
Right.
So yeah, fireworks and the music, and
it's great.
So yeah, a less subtle use of 4th of July. It was like Return of the Living Dead. You don't see any fireworks. I mean, they put it up on screen, they mention it, but there's no visual representation of 4th of July. Like no fireworks, no parades, no flags, no. If you didn't read that card, you'd never know it was the 4th of July if you weren't really paying attention.
You might think it's like sort of credits or something, and you don't look at it.
Yeah. You know,
entirely.
Right. So
but it is.
Yeah, so I just rewatched this one today. So that's kind of fresh in my mind. But I'd seen it probably in theaters with you when it first came out, and maybe once after that, and I hadn't seen it in years. So it was good. It was good to revisit it and see it again.
Yeah, it was. I hadn't seen it in years. And Sarah, of course, being Buffy, you can't say anything against Sarah Michelle Gellar. Buffy fans will come find you if you do. But I have to say that Jennifer Love Hewitt got a lot of crap back in the day, but she's excellent. Watching it again,
oh yeah,
she does her job perfectly. That's exactly what she was supposed to do. She's great in this movie.
I think they all are, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, you're not thinking of like, thespians as being like, Freddie Prinze Jr. or Sarah Michelle Gellar, but they're solid. I mean, they're good actors.
Do their job so well.
And they just played these characters really well. And again, for Sarah Michelle Gellar to sort of step out of that Buffy role, where on Buffy she's strong, she's kind of superhuman. She's the chosen one, she's the Slayer. And
and
then to
see her vulnerable
and just the kind of bubbly homecoming queen who fails at college and is under her sister's thumb, and it's just a very different character for her, but she plays it well. And Jennifer Love Hewitt is great.
And Buffy, she was the older sister, and now she has an older sister.
Right.
She does it very well.
Yeah, they all did. I mean, I was really surprised.
It's surprising seeing it again after all these years.
And it's funny because I was watching it, and I felt like Ryan Philippe. You could have taken him out and put Matthew Lillard in there, or Matthew Lillard. I don't know how you say his name.
Yeah, right.
And it would have been, because he was almost like channeling Matthew Lillard from Scream. It was very similar.
I thought it was more like Skeet Ulrich.
A little combination, but but I could see Matthew Lillard being Lillard. I keep saying his name wrong. Matthew Lillard. Lillard sounds fancy. Matthew Lillard. Mr. Lillard. Little John Houseman. But yeah, Matthew Lillard. Skeet Ulrich could have played that as well. And so when you said that the same guy who did the Scream movies did this, I could totally see that. So if you like the Scream films, you'll like this one. It's
young talented actors, not very terribly well known, but coming off of some other work, who are just great at what they do.
Right. Yeah, good flick.
Yeah.
And then the last one, last but not least.
How
could you have an Independence Day movie chat without Independence Day?
Independence Day. Least subtle film. It was even released on July 3rd, 1996. They started showing it actually July 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
They were really trying to capitalize on the holiday, on the date. Again, so not subtle. But it's great. You can't buy that type of press. Independence Day released on Independence Day. That's really hard. They've tried to do that before with The Omen.
Mm-hmm.
The original Omen and the remake, both released on June 6th. To capitalize on the sixes.
Right.
We should do a podcast about Antichrist movies. I don't know.
Yeah, we're going to write these ideas down. Just keep doing them.
Yeah.
But
Roland Emmerich, Dean Devlin, who worked together on Stargate, Godzilla. I hate to mention that one, but Godzilla. Then Roland Emmerich by himself, he did The Day After Tomorrow. And Dean Devlin did Geostorm and The Patriot. So very well-known writer-directors. And not great cinema, but super successful. Like it's for the masses, clearly for the masses.
Yeah, it's popcorn fare. It's turn your brain off.
That's what the 4th of July is about. It's for everybody.
Right. And I think that's why it was probably their best movie, their most successful movie.
Yeah.
It just and again, this is another one that just the stars aligned on this one. It was the cast.
Great cast.
The writing was snappy. I think
the visual effects,
the visual effects and editing
is actually really good.
And that whole and they kind of showed themselves to be a one-trick pony with this, but and people talk about like the landmark destruction, destroying the Empire State Building, destroying the Statue of Liberty, destroying well-known landmarks. It just kind of became a trope in Hollywood where, like, after this, most movies where there's an alien attack or a monster attack, it's never attacking, Boise, Idaho. It's attacking, it's going right after the Golden Gate Bridge, or it's going to the Empire State Building. And again, King Kong,
Statue of Liberty, like these big landmarks. I haven't done enough research. I'm trying to wrap my brain thinking about this. I don't know if Independence Day created that or made it popular. It certainly made it popular.
And I think it was just they did it so much in this movie, and I think it was the visual effects. I mean, it was almost like with what Lucas did with Star Wars, just kind of taking it to that next level. And I think Independence Day really took what special effects were at that time and just ramped it up. And people watching this movie were like blown away. Put a bad pun in there, but like watching the Empire State Building just get obliterated like that. I mean, you didn't see anything like that in movies before that, of just the whole building just from the top down being blown apart. And
I watched it again last night. I mean, those effects stand up.
Yeah.
And it's almost 30 years old, this film. It's good.
Well, that's the thing. Same thing with Lucas. Like when you watch A New Hope and you're watching those visual effects and you're like, a lot of the stuff on Disney Plus doesn't look that good. You watch Kenobi or The Mandalorian. Some of those shots don't look as good as like that opening sequence with the Star Destroyer chasing Leia's ship. And it's like,
yeah, they were models. And it looks fantastic.
Right. 40 something years ago, and they can't replicate that. So, and then just the cast, Bill Pullman, Will Smith, who has kind of fallen from grace, sadly. Jeff
Goldblum.
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 Must go faster.
Faster. Everybody knows that line because it's amazing. It's like we're gonna need a bigger boat. There's so many one-liners in this film. Will Smith, of course, welcome to Earth.
Welcome to Earth.
Yeah. The president, Bill Pullman's speech is inspiring.
Oh, yeah.
Like I stood up. I was watching it again last night, and I stood up. It's like, and I saluted the guy because what a speech.
Again, like, pure jingoism, but like, how could you resist? You just got to be like, yeah, fuck yeah.
Because
I'm going to salute him.
It's from the invading alien force. So it's like, okay, you can get behind that. They're not, the harvesters are like locusts, they're clearly, it's very clear that they're just the enemy. They're the bad guys.
Right.
And Bill Pullman and all of his crew are the good guys.
Right.
So it's very black and white that way. There's no gray here. So you can get behind the speech and all of that. Jeff Goldblum, Time's Up, Checkmate. Those are good. Russell Case, Randy Quaid. I'm not going to say that one, but if you haven't seen Independence Day, do yourself a favor, watch it. And Brett Spiner, Data himself, is in this very small role. Won't say too much about it, but maybe I shouldn't even say that. I won't say. He does say the last 24 hours have been very exciting. And of course, this movie starts on July 2nd. There's an attack on the 4th, and I won't say anything more about that.
Yeah. So again, it's not so much the celebration of July 4th, but it's the whole theme of the movie is the world claiming independence from these conquering invaders from parts unknown, another planet, the aliens coming down and just obliterating us. And yeah, like you said, Bill Pullman's speech is it's a very American speech, but it's also a very human speech of just,
Yeah. People coming
we are
together,
not going to,
humanity coming together.
right, humanity coming together. We will not go quietly into this night. Just banding together and becoming one human race, and not bickering amongst ourselves, but fighting an outside alien force. And yeah, it works so well. I mean, it's cheesy. It's not an original idea. This is basically War of the Worlds repackaged.
Yep.
Even the ending is a little sort of play on words to the ending of War of the Worlds. So it is not an original idea, but the execution is just so good. And again, it's a turn your brain off popcorn flick.
Popcorn.
Just enjoy it. Enjoy Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum. Enjoy Will Smith being Will Smith when he was at his height of popularity. Enjoy Bill Pullman for, and Bill Pullman can do a lot of stuff. I mean, he can do comedy, Spaceballs. He could do serious stuff like he does here. But you do get into some of the stereotypes. Judd Hirsch.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. We do. There are some unfortunate stereotypes. I don't think this film would be made like this now.
No, and I don't think
I actually think that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I don't think they were meant to be mean spirited.
I don't think so. No.
I think it was, Judd Hirsch is playing Jeff Goldblum's father, and he's playing a very Jewish man in New York City, and stereotypical, and it's not made fun of. He's just who he is. He's Jewish. I mean, Harvey Firestein's in it, and he's clearly very gay. Randy Quaid is the white trash sort of hillbilly who gets abducted by aliens, and there's these real stereotypes in this movie.
But they're all good people.
They're all good people, and that's and
who want to do good things. They want to help other people. So,
right. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think there's any bad intentions behind it, or I think a lot of them were just meant to show that, yeah, you can have a stereotypical person. You can have these people who are very different come together and be good people and banding together. And yeah, because Judd Hirsch brings some kids together. And at the end, there's, a very subtle but sort of touching scene when he's doing the prayer circle, and, the guy from the government comes and joins them. And again, there's no anti-Semitism. There's no anti-anything in this movie. It's not preachy. It's not, there's these stereotypes that you could not get away with today. They're played a little bit for comedic effect, but not in a mean-spirited way. It's just kind of showing the differences. And yeah,
I think they would do it today slightly differently. I think the characters, you can keep the characters. I think just maybe dialing it back a little bit.
Yeah. And again, I think there was a message there, which you see a lot in movies today. There's always a message. There's always, preachiness these days, and fine, whatever. I don't want to get into that. But there was a subtlety back then of sort of bringing these sort of stereotypes in. I mean, even Brent Spiner. I mean, you could look at each one of these characters and say they're a particular stereotype. But there's that undercurrent of everyone coming together, and they're all good people. Doesn't matter if this is a hillbilly, or if this is, a homosexual, or a Jew, or a black guy in the army or the Air Force. Like, it's just
lots of different types of people coming together.
Right. And it's just this, right. And it was a great message, and very subtle for Roland Emmerich, and
Yeah, you're right. It's the most subtle thing about this film.
Right. Because everything else is just in your face and spelled out for you. And yeah, but I think that was very subtle and very well done. And again, not something you could do today, and maybe you shouldn't do. I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that, but it's just, again, if you haven't seen Independence Day, go watch it. It's a great film. It's not high cinema. It's silly. It's quippy. It's very sort of Marvel-ish in that way, where there's like lots of one-liners and zingers, and
yeah.
But it works. And it's like a feel-good movie. And I mean, people coming out of, and that's why it was one of the biggest movies of all time. Like, you come out of the theater feeling good, and feeling good about humanity, and feeling good about your fellow person. And who would have thought that a summer blockbuster would do that.
Yeah.
Especially coming from these guys who, like you said, did Godzilla and did, The Day After Tomorrow and a lot of other stinkers and movies that just were just not nearly as charming as this movie.
Yeah.
Tried a lot of similar stuff, but failed. And just, again, this movie was just like an alignment of the stars where they got everything right about this movie.
Yeah. So there you have it. 5 films, very different films, lots of different genres, even within the films that could fit into lots of different categories. Some of them, you like Independence Day, you'll feel rejuvenated afterwards. Some of them, like The Bay, you will have nightmares, maybe for the rest of your life. I don't know. But all of them taking place before, during, and slightly after the 4th of July. So happy July 4th, everybody.
Happy July 4th, everybody. Happy birthday, America. Happy birthday, Jake. Layla.
To all your family members.
Tommy, yeah, everybody in my family who was born on the 4th of July. Another movie.
DJ Tommy. Of course.
What's that?
DJ Tommy.
DJ Tommy, yeah. So, yeah, awesome. This is a great idea, brother. Thank you for doing this. And I know you work hard on these. People don't know this, but I kind of fly by the seat of my pants, but you really prepare for these episodes. You write it, you type up
notes upon notes.
You have notes upon notes, and you share them in Google Drive with me, and I get to look at them ahead of time. And
I have the films, of course.
Right, you have all the films. I'm just trying to stream them somewhere. I mean, I have Jaws on DVD. I don't think I have any of the others. I mean, Jaws I had to get on DVD, but the others I was just like streaming wherever I could find them.
I don't have The Bay. That's one of the films like Joey on Friends. He had to keep I forget what book it was. It was a Stephen King book. He had to keep it in the freezer because he just couldn't have it in the regular house. I cannot have The Bay in my home. I cannot have that movie. That's the only one I don't have. I do have all the others.
See, now people are going to go watch it just because you're telling everybody not to watch it. It's one of those things, because now I want to watch it and I'm probably going to throw up. And I have a pretty strong stomach with movies and gross out stuff.
Oh, gross.
Real life is a different story, but movies, I can watch pretty much anything and be like, I know it's all special effects. Real life, like little baby spits up a little bit. And I'm like, no, thank you. So I'll probably watch it. But yeah, thank you so much for this, brother. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your wonderful podcast.
Thank you.
Odd and Untold.
Odd and Untold. And we will do more of these like movie theme. We want to do like a scary music episode. We have a lot of ideas. So
yeah,
we will have a lot more episodes. And this is your 10th appearance on my show, you were saying earlier?
This is the 10th time I've been on your show. And I feel honored for coming on every time. So thank you.
Well, thank you for coming on. I remember the first time asking you to come on, I thought you'd never do it. I was like, he's never going to do this. Like, because I knew your feelings on the paranormal, and I was like, I'll never get him on the show. And now you're like my most frequent guest. You're like with SNL, like the hosts who are like the 5-timers and the 10-timers. And so you're like a 10-timer now.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like Tom Hanks. You're Tom Hanks of the of Odd and Untold.
Tom Hanks is a national treasure, so
he is. So
sentence with me. And
you are my national treasure.
Thank you. You are my national treasure.
Well,
that's a different film. I don't know that we can get that in here.
Steel Declaration of Independence. Yeah. Also great films. I love those films.
Yeah, me too. I just watched them.
Yeah.
I watched the first one. The second one, have you seen the second one?
I've seen, yeah.
Really good too.
Yeah. I mean, they're, again, equally ridiculous, but
sure, but
just fun movies.
So entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you for having me. I'll definitely come on again.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. And happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July.
Enjoy your celebration, and we'll be in touch soon.
All right. Take care.
Right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. All right. I want to thank my buddy John for coming on once again. This is his 10th appearance, which was shocking to me. I thought he'd been on 4 or 5 times by my count, but this is number 10. 9 episodes, and then there was one like little bonus episode we did together. So he's been on the show 10 times, which is awesome. So thank you, John, for coming on. Like I said earlier, I never thought he'd even come on, and now he's my most frequent guest and co-host. So thank you, John. Thank you, my friend. And little discussion about 4th of July horror movies. We didn't get to all the ones we wanted to get to, so maybe next year we'll do another episode and do more. But just with these 5 movies, we kind of almost went to 90 minutes. So had to cut a few of them out, but he had a few more ideas. So maybe we'll talk about those next year. If you have a favorite horror movie for 4th of July, we'd love to hear about it in the comments below. If you think we missed anything, if you want to add anything to the discussion, we love hearing from you. Just want to wish a happy birthday again to my son, Jake, to Caitlin, Tommy, my cousin Layla, anybody else who has a 4th of July birthday. Happy birthday, America. I'm wearing a Gettysburg shirt, but it's the only shirt I really have with an American flag on it. And if you guys are listening on a podcast, please consider subscribing, leave us a review, as many stars as you like. If you want to leave a text review, we'd love to hear your feedback. If you're watching on YouTube, please consider liking this video, giving the channel a subscribe, and ding the little bell, just so that you get notified when new episodes come out. It really helps the channel. And until next week, everybody, stay safe, stay away from the fireworks, don't get hurt, and enjoy celebrating today. Till next time, everybody, rock and roll.